Amateur Hour, it's his first time producing. Oh yeah, that's why it's Amateur Hour. He doesn't know what he's doing. Oh yeah, it's Amateur Hour.
Welcome to Amateur Hour, where a former film school dropout sets out to be a future filmmaker. I'm your host, Rob Jarasinski, and joining me today are some of our investors for Rainbow Swan, which is our production company, and the film is Hauntology. Joining us is Rachel Scatia.
Hi there.
Catherine Clark.
Hello.
And Chris Trengove.
Hello.
Now, two of those names might be familiar to our listening audience. Catherine was a contributor for us for a period of time on Alternate Ending. So welcome back, Catherine.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And Chris is a current contributor for Alternate Ending. So
hello.
I didn't have to go far to find people who are my people. When I started the process of reaching out to folks, I thought about people who have kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like that you all check the box there. And film lovers. So those were like the two criteria that I went out. And I reached out to my one of my oldest friends, Rachel Scatia, who's on as well too. But Rachel, like you and I started our relationship like in a working capacity back. Is it 15 years ago? I'm losing track of the time, but I want to say I met you in 2007. And I remember meeting you vividly because you didn't meet me. I was like in my first like big corporate meeting, and Rachel just walks in the room and is presenting on something and exudes this quiet confidence that you haven't lost. You've only improved on in your corporate life. And I was just like blown away. I was like, that person's cool. Like I want to be a corporate person like that. I want to be able to just own a room like Rachel does, which Rachel still you do in all of our investor meetings that we have as well.
Okay. I don't know where to go from here.
But you know what's funny is like,
I'll say this. I'll say this about you, Rob. The thing that has stuck with me in meeting you in a corporate environment is how much fun you want to have. No matter what the scenario is, you want to have a good time. And I think that is so very important, especially in the financial industry.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all numbers and dollars and things, and you can have fun in that. And, I think even to this day, like I think my coworkers would hopefully say that I try to bring a little fun and, excitement and storytelling to whatever thing that I'm doing. And what's interesting is your husband and Carrie, my wife. We were kind of like the couples within the corporate world. Like we all met at work, and but it's your husband who actually was more of the like. He and I connected more on the film side because he's a big cinephile as well too.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He certainly is.
So do you have a similar type of casual moviegoer and cinephile relationship like Carrie and I do? Or are you on board? Do you have similar tastes to his tastes?
I think I've adopted some of his tastes. I mean, we've been together for over 20 years. I think that just happens in part of your relationship. I think what's different about us is I hold the stage. As you mentioned earlier, like that is, I want to be that center star because the world is a stage as far as I'm concerned. So, but Sam is not like that.
Well, I'm secretly an introvert, which nobody believes, and I get it. And this is why, Rachel, you and I won. It's still to this day, I'm very proud of it. Won Best Actor and Best Actress at the Murder Mystery Party, and it wasn't just so. Folks listening don't think that there was just the two of us participating in the murder mystery. There were many people, but only two.
There were many.
Yeah, were awarded Best Actor and Best Actress, and they're here on this podcast. And interestingly enough, Chris, you and your wife, I know you as I met you through your wife, who I work with, and you're the cinephile in the relationship. And what's that like? Is she on board with a lot of the movies that you watch, or do you all have different tastes as well?
Laura is not on board with a lot of the movies that I watch. I tend to, in my spare time, veer toward the movies that critic in residence of Alternate Ending Tim Brayton would put in his year-end top 10. Those are not the types of movies that Laura necessarily gravitates to. Often she'll come down late at night or random times if we're not hanging out, and she'll see that I'm watching some miscellaneous movie in language X, and she'll say, "Do you ever watch American movies anymore?" But we do. We watch. You'll love this, Rob. We're actually doing an MCU chronological rewatch. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, we're about halfway through that. We've got Age of the Great, Orson Welles' Age of Ultron coming up. So that's exciting. And then, yeah, but so no, we're on slightly different movie pages at the moment.
But I imagine the MCU rewatch is kid driven, is it not?
It's actually not. And I'm pretty critical of the franchise. But like I said, Laura, it might actually be fun to watch them all chronologically. I've never done that. She said, yeah, that would be fun. And so we found common ground. We're not watching Tarkovsky together. We're watching MCU, and that's great. But no, we haven't introduced my kids are younger than yours, nearly 6 and 3. So the MCU is still a few years away for Aiden, I think.
Yeah. And Catherine, speaking of commonalities, you and I miss you on the site because I feel like our tastes were pretty aligned. So I've lost an ally, in that. And funny enough, the background on Catherine and I is that, let me see if I can piece this together correctly. You are my wife's sister's best friend. And
That's right.
Yes. Okay. I got that right. And yet we have more in common now than you and your best friend. So when
Becky and I have never had a ton in common, though we always get along regardless. Carrie and I have more in common, but when I met you, Rob, it was definitely a kinship. We're both have that dreamer gene, although you're a much better doer than I am when it comes to that.
Well, yes. And that actually is interesting too, because yes, that kind of circles us back to the doing part of making a movie. And it was a dream. It was a crazy idea. And I had mentioned before that Parker brought it to us as a new contributor. Parker joined around the same time, Chris, that you did as a contributor. And I remember you being the first person because that I reached out to as a person to vet the shorts with, the Parker short films with, because as I had mentioned before in the first episode of Amateur Hours, I don't trust my short viewing habits because I tend to be very critical, and I wasn't. So I guess that's a good sign. But I wanted to make sure that from a critic's lens, that Parker's shorts held up. And interestingly enough, Chris, I don't remember if you remember what your take was, but did you remember what your reaction was when you saw or the order or anything that stood out specifically about Parker shorts?
I was impressed. I didn't know that he had already made movies. I didn't know that he had already made short movies. I knew he was a filmmaker, but I thought aspiring. But yeah, he had made 3 actual shorts and 1 concept, I guess is what you would call it. But I'm just pulled them up here. We got Elise's Nightmare, Haunt Me, Below the Trees, which is the concept, and Winter's Blood, which is the most recent. And they range from about 3 minutes to 4 minutes to 17 minutes for the concept. And I watched them and I was very impressed. I made notes at the time that I thought he handled atmospheric horror very well. There's some dialogue, not an excessive amount of dialogue, but there's just a feel about Parker's shorts that just stood out to me. It's a je ne sais quoi. But I also noticed, and I watched them chronologically from as he progressed, They just became more interesting, and the sound became more interesting, and the sound effects and the score got cooler. He hired a great guy to do a John Carpenter riff, John Carpenter 80s horror riff, which is fantastic in one of the later shorts. And I thought to myself, okay, so not only does he understand atmosphere, he understands haunting ghost horror well, but like he's also getting better, and like I said to myself, what could he do with a feature film at the time? But yeah, I think Parker's got a lot of talent. Ben Wheatley is a director that I think is I find some commonality in their work. Kill List is Wheatley's most famous, and I think he just did In the Earth last year. And then Robert Eggers is The Witch. Robert Eggers is a huge name right now. The Northman was just released, The Lighthouse a few years ago, but Robert Eggers got started with The Witch, which is this very atmospheric, witchy horror film set in Salem, times, old Salem times, and it's wonderful, wonderful horror movie. I found some similarities between what Eggers did in some of his scenes that built up tension and horror, and what Parker did in his small short. So there's a lot of talent there, and that's what really stood out to me at the time. And actually, I went to a couple friends of mine who are film buffs because I didn't necessarily trust myself. And I said, hey, buddy, what do you think about this guy? And would you be interested in seeing a feature length from him in a theoretical world? And he was like, I think he's good. And yes, I would be interested. So shout out to my friend Lawrence. But that was my first take back in the day now. Yeah.
So Chris, Laura, and I, and Carrie at the time kind of went to work trying to think about what would need to be true in order to want to invest. And at the time we were thinking much smaller budget than we are now, something that was manageable between the two couples and Parker. And I think life just got in the way, and things started getting busy, and I kept moving the project forward with Parker. And I think as we started moving it forward, my eyes started getting wider as far as things that we would want in it. And I wasn't willing to, as much as I was at the beginning, to compromise. And that's when I started just curious, like, well, if we found one person, a set of people who were interested, could we find more? And Rachel, I think you might have been, if not the first person after Chris that I reached out to, but like right after, like near the first. And like, I think I was watching a lot of your Facebook things, and you live a very passionate life. You're always off doing interesting things and chasing moments and experiences. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this would be right for Rachel. And so I reached out to you, and I don't even remember how I pitched it initially. I think I was like, I'm thinking about making a movie. Would you be interested? Like, as simple as that.
Oh, I pulled it up. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it started with, so totally out of the blue and random, but I'm finally realizing a dream of producing a movie with a really talented director. That was your opening line.
I like it.
And I was like, oh boy. That was my first reaction, really. But I also watched Parker's shorts, and what is it? Below the Trees, right? Or Beneath the Trees?
No, Below the Trees.
Below.
Yeah.
Below the Trees. I literally, like, when I first watched that, I wanted more. I wanted more out of it. I wanted to see, like get more into the story. And that for me was the initial, oh, this could be really good. And got me very excited. And I think my first response to you was, oh man, this is tempting. What's the timeline?
Right. Cause it's not like, wanting to do something and having the means, and the means sometimes is timing related, could be timing related as well too. So, that all is a factor for folks, and, it's different for every person. So, what was, what was kind of the motivation to want to, so it sounds like it was the Below the Trees that kind of really got you hooked.
Well, Below the Trees got me hooked, but I would be remiss if I didn't say your passion came across in your email. Like, I could hear you talking to me, even though it was just a message. Well, it was actually a Facebook message to me about this. And, I was already like, oh, I want to do this. This sounds fun.
And
seeing Parker's, seeing his shorts and watching that. And then, I asked you a whole slew of questions, right, that you would typically ask, if an investor would ask in thinking through whether or not it was a good investment or not. And you came through with more than I had anticipated that you would be bringing forward as we got into looking at the investor stuff. But I don't want to go down that path yet, 'cause you still got to talk to Catherine about your engagement with her.
Yes. So Catherine, not to feel left out, but I know that you had just started a new job and bought a house. So while I knew that you would be perfect for this, back to the, timing, means, I was like, I don't know, has anybody here had to ask for money from people before? I know you do that, Chris, kind of as part of your job in a way.
Yeah, in a way that is part of the day work, but it's not, no, I haven't done it like this.
No, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable because at the end of the day, I believe in the project, but the project requires money. So at some point we're going to have this discussion. Like, there is going to be a discussion of money and how much and all that. And so now, again, Catherine, not because I didn't want to include you sooner. I was nervous to bring it up because it'd be rude almost and presumptuous it would be as if I didn't know what was going on in your life to say oh, this thing that I know you'd be interested in. Oh, Rob must not even he knows I just bought a house. He knows I just started a new job. Probably not good timing, but I was, you were interested.
Yeah, I definitely was. And we did do some crowdfunding on this end to make it happen. But again, I live kind of the double income, child-free lifestyle too. So for us, it's not super out of the realm of what we could do. And I agree with Rachel that, your enthusiasm, your passion for it, and just my excitement at a project like this is so compelling. And I think I've said this to you before, but if there's ever a project or a person that I would trust with a project and who comes with a business acumen and just real drive, it's Rob. So for me, it was not a matter of, is this a good financial decision or is this a good way to support the arts? It definitely was. And it was really just, how do we make this work? And who can we go to? Mom, whoever it happens to be, to help out. But, that's how you make projects happen.
Thanks, Mrs. Clark. And Chris, you brought up something interesting too, because I think everybody's mentioned Below the Trees now. I think amongst us, not that there's not that anyone is bad, but that tends to be the one that people kind of lean towards. Chris, you were really passionate of wanting to see, and because Rachel brought this up too, it's I wanted more. You were really passionate about wanting to see a feature Below the Trees, a feature length version of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much potential in that for a feature length. And I know you and I have had conversations with Parker and about the potential of blowing that up. It's not there yet. It's potentially down the line, but it's a great short. Or concept, but it's a great short film, and I think there's just so much potential there. And that was the one really that I saw that made me think, yeah, I could. I think it's 17 minutes. I could do another hour of this, and I think Parker's the man to deliver it creatively.
So as you were daydreaming now all about what this could mean, not having too many details, you haven't gotten the script maybe yet. What were you picturing the process to be like, Rachel? What were you in your mind? What would this go? How would this happen? How would this go? Did you think was there any moment of doubt initially of I'll say yes now, I'm really just kind of being nice. I'll wait to see kind of what all comes together, but it probably won't.
So I'll say this, because you actually said this to me. You said, be honest, you're already picking out your dress to walk the red carpet with us, which I was. I mean, that's where I went. But you know, I got really excited about it before I got the script. And then I talked to my husband about it, and I did not find that same matched excitement. So I had to navigate that a little bit. And, you know, it's interesting, Rob, because I don't know that I necessarily said yes. It was like, I want to know more and I want to get comfortable with what we're doing. And I definitely have to read the script. Like, that was the thing that I kept saying. I have to read the script. And then, it was interesting because I did kind of have to navigate that, you know, relationship dynamic of, hey, like, we're talking about an investment here that, you know, may or may not pay off. Like, you don't know, right? And we were in the process of having conversations around, hey, like, do we want to invest in a brewery? Do we want to invest in this thing? Do I want to, you know, send something to Joffrey Ballet? Like, all these things, like, these were all these conversations. So it was like, the timing of reaching out could not have been more perfect, but the navigation of that relationship dynamic was something that I worked through. And part of it is that Sam knows me very well. I do have a hard time saying no to people. And so I had to practice kind of sharing with Rob what my concerns were and things that that needed to be true for me in order for us to move forward. And that was before I knew that I had to have my spouse sign the operation agreement.
I'm pretty sure Carrie hasn't read it. She signed it, but she didn't read it. I'm pretty sure. So, for whatever that's worth. But you're not alone.
Same.
Yeah. I think everybody on here had to navigate some of those concerns. I'm seeing a lot of head shaking, and Chris is just still on the brewery thing because he's like, you made a poor choice. You should have went.
I'm thinking actually now I might want to actually pull out and see what brewery I can invest in right now. That's really intriguing though. That'll be investment too. After this is mega successful and before our next film project.
Because I value all of our respective spouses, including my own. I won't put anybody else on the spot, but if you would like to share some of the kind of dynamics that happened, Catherine, or I'll start with Catherine and then work my way back to Chris. Any challenges there?
Yeah, I think for me, because I love horror generally, especially kind of high concept themed horror. I definitely love that it came back into fashion about 20 years ago. So for me, it was really quite an easy sell, like Rachel and Chris. But for my husband, it wasn't, you know, the quickest sell, but he doesn't know Rob as well as I do. So I think I went in going, Rob's going to take this as seriously as he can. It's going to be well executed. It'll be the level of professionalism that I think any really good independent film will have. And it took probably the early pitch meetings to show Stephen, my husband, that was where we were at with this, that it wasn't just, a student film done by some folks running out. I think, Rob, you'd mentioned that in the previous podcast of just kind of going out with a camera and really learning quickly that isn't always the way to go. So I knew that wouldn't be the case. And I think Stephen got on board pretty quickly with that and now is equally excited and just can't wait to see it, although he's not as big of a horror fan as I am. So we'll see how that goes.
This one will, I think, be right up his alley. And yes, I will not be doing anything behind the camera. That would have been red flag city for sure. I found my lane and I'm staying in it. Chris, how about you? And I want to add, it's extra complicated because I see your wife from time to time in person, and we don't talk about the movie project when I see her. 'Cause we're creating that wall of professionalism. And where I'm not bringing it up, she's not bringing it up, and we don't talk about it when we see each other. And what happens, after hours, after work, that's between us and, so to speak. So.
It's very secretive. So everybody out there in the AE community, just as a refresher, Rob and Carrie and I all met because Laura, my wife, works with Rob and Carrie and Rachel. Of course, you and Laura work together, and I didn't even know this until honestly our last business meeting last week. And I'm LinkedIn messaging you and requesting your connection, and I say, oh, you're connected to my wife, Laura. So then I went upstairs afterwards. I'm like, Laura, do you know Rachel? And she's like, yeah, we work together. She's great. So
she's so lovely. I love Laura. She's great too.
She's infinite better half in this.
There was a concerted sigh of relief once Laura found out that you were, I think, on the project. She's like, okay. Like, I could sleep better now knowing that Rachel's on the project.
Yeah.
Well, so Sam was like, oh, Laura's interested in this? Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. Life got in the way in the earlier conversations. I've had some professional turnover myself. I just recently started, got with a new employer, but I think that when you talk about doing a movie, it's very romantic at first, right? It's very just star-eyed and like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And then I think when Carrie, Rob, Laura, and I had that first couple conversations, it just was, the reality maybe was a little concerning. And, this was before Rob had put together the immaculate pitch deck and everything. And I think there was just, a little bit of concern from Carrie. I know she's expressed that in the primary pod, and from Laura as well. And so, Laura said she wasn't interested in being hands-on in the project. And I still remained interested, but I was like, well, Laura's the business brain of our relationship. And I'm a little concerned, what I would be doing, without her. I'd be there for creative and critical input, but, the process continued, and to be a broken record here, but Rob, your passion and stick-to-itness has been incredible, and it's not just me who noticed, or Rachel or Catherine. Laura noticed it as well, and she knows you. She works with you day to day, or often enough, and she has been blown away by how amazingly well organized you have this. So that's been part of Laura being back on. There's a spousal, consent signature that we were naive about. And so we had a conversation on like why Laura has to sign it, and but we're all good now, and we're on board, and the household, I should say, the couple. But yeah, it sounds like all four of us have had a similar dynamic to work through.
Well, Chris, there was reasons I think that were reasonable to doubt, like some potential early on. While everybody's been very complimentary to me about my stick-to-itiveness, I haven't always been able to do that for all things. And one thing that comes to mind that Rachel's probably very familiar with is my CD project that Carrie's brought up many times. And I don't know, Rachel, if you want to take it from there, but any recollection of a CD project that I did?
So I do kind of wish that Carrie was here, because she could really put some real light around this. But I will tell you what I noticed, or what I experienced. Rob came out with this wonderful singer-songwriter CD, Convergence. And I went to several shows that Rob had. And it was very good. He was great. And Carrie, contributed to the songs, and as well as Dwayne, actually, one of your other investors.
Yeah.
And I don't know the specifics, but I do know that there was investment to create a plethora of CDs that to this day may or may not be in a basement. I'll say that.
Yeah, they're still in our basement, and we may be sending them out with every digital copy of Hauntology when it's all said and done. So, yeah, that project was.
It was before streaming. It was before like songs that you could just get on all of the different platforms. It was, so I will give you that, Rob. If it had all been in streaming, maybe we would be having a different conversation.
Yes, and this is why I'm very thankful for having you all part of the process, because you bring a level of restraint that I think I need. And to be, Catherine mentioned a dreamer, I need to be grounded sometimes, often. And that CD project, the challenge with that was it was always just a little bit more to get it a little bit better. So I always wanted to like go get the thing. It's like, I could just play acoustic guitar and sing, and that could be the CD, and it would cost $1,000. I was like, you know what though? Like if I got a professional drummer who played for Sixpence None the Richer, and I got a producer who worked on Radiohead stuff, like then it would be really good. And it probably didn't need all of those things. So that's where Parker being a really nice compliment to me in showing that restraint and finding efficient ways to do things has been very eye-opening. And I've grown a lot since then too. Not much, but enough. But yeah, this is why we're having lots of budget revision discussions. So keep me on my toes, y'all. Keep me on my toes.
Got to see those red lines, Rob.
Yes, we got to see the red lines. Those were good. That was good feedback. But I did want to talk about too. So I've dangled the carrot. You're interested. You've already picked out your dress for the opening, for the premiere, and you're waiting to get delivered the script. And as I've mentioned an investor overview, we're like a week out. I deliver the script, the investor overview. You see it. Did all of you? I know, Chris, you read the script like in a day. It took me like a week to read just because I'm a slow reader. How did it go with you, Rachel? As far as like getting through the script.
I was reading it in between, like at my 5 a.m. hour of just being like, okay, let me just get through some of this. I actually read it, I think fairly quickly, probably over a couple of days. And I liked it. I'm going to say I liked it.
Yeah. And Catherine, how about you? I know you're a pretty big reader as well too. So I don't imagine it created any obstacles to get through it.
No, I plowed through it pretty quickly. And for me, it hit a lot of good notes. A vignette. I love a good vignette. I love coming of age vibes. For me, it really hit some good things. And I was very excited once I read it. It felt like this is super high quality. This could be turned into something very high quality in the right hands, the dream team, as it were.
And, simultaneously what's happening is behind the scenes is, Parker was rewriting. I'm on calls trying to get crew people to buy into this concept as well, and building this investor presentation of, we have these things. And it like I'm running into this now, and I don't want to get too much into casting, but we keep being told like it's surprising that we're actually funded, because a lot of people play this game of chicken and the egg. Well, we have this great project. We need the funding. We can't get the funding until we have the cast. The cast doesn't want to join unless you have the funding, and you just play this dance back and forth. So to be in a position now, and that's where I was kind of in the investor meeting, is I knew I had people interested if we could pay them what they needed to pay from a crew perspective. So, I wasn't trying to be disingenuous by like putting people's information up there. Like these were legit people who said, oh yeah, I'm in. When we're ready to get started, when you're funded, like let's go make this movie. So I put together, like, I don't remember how many slides it was, but the day of the meeting happens, and or the evening of the meeting, and this will be good for you, Chris, to kind of hear behind the scenes because I think it went well, but I don't know. I rented a private, again, probably didn't need to do that, but I didn't trust my internet. My internet was pretty spotty. So I rented a room in a co-working location, a conference room to myself. And I played music from one of Parker's scores to like kick things off and the presentation, and just walk through the story. And I try to frame it structurally in the right order of things. And Parker had some speaking moments as well too. And I'm curious, Rachel, from your perspective, how that, while it's happening, while you see other faces there, was there like, I'd love to know what your feelings were during that meeting, if you can remember.
So we had some conversations along the way. So for me, the meeting was a little repetitive for me because of the conversations that we had, ahead. But then, I kind of said, okay, well, just because you and I have had some of these conversations doesn't mean everybody else has, right? As much as you, not that piece. What I was going to say is, I think you did a really good job of walking everybody through. And your enthusiasm just came through so very, very like larger than life. That for me continued to just resonate in terms of like how great this could be. And I think you tried to get a place that wouldn't drop your internet, but your internet dropped anyway.
It very much did, and put Parker in a very precarious situation, because I was supposed to handle all the business questions. And then like right when my internet drops was like I think one of our now investors asked a very good question about like, what happens if you need more funding? How will that work? And internet drops. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is where the dream dies, this moment. And, but I hopped back on, and Parker somehow had managed to stall enough so that I could answer the question. And Catherine.
It went a little long, which not surprising. And I think at one point before you had come back on, I said to Parker, so Parker, how are we going to wrap this up? We were already over time.
Yeah, and you had already established a nice relationship with Parker, I think, at that point, because you actually had some feedback on the script that Parker incorporated that you pointed out to me as well too, that makes the story a little stronger. And we've had several sessions like that since, where folks like Ryan, who's one of our investors, and Chris and I had a nice discussion. For those who don't know, just a little bit behind the scenes, the way we structured the agreement, we knew that there would be people who wanted more creative input, and then there were people who really wanted to be more on the business side. The creative individuals still get business decisions as well too, but it comes with some trade-offs. And that was a really interesting thing. Like the whole structure of this is all made up. Like we made this up. Like I don't know, I've never seen what a contract in a production company looks like with investors outside of our little world, but we got to kind of build it and define it and refine it along the way, which was a lot of fun. And I think at that point we didn't have, I guess you had seen like a draft. I doubt anybody had actually looked at it, because it was 30 pages of legal stuff. So I don't think we had even really, you all trusted me that the intent that I was saying in the meeting was going to end up in that agreement. So we didn't really go through it at that time. But Catherine, you were very supportive on the investor meeting as well too. So any red flags or anything stand out to you about that night?
Yeah. So like Rachel, I'd gotten a bit of a sneaky peeky of the presentation ahead of time and some questions answered. And so I think I knew the level of detail we'd be getting, and it felt very comforting. And then the meeting itself had a vibration of smart people in a room asking great questions. And it felt like if these people who really feel like they know what they're doing are into it, then why would I not be into it? And that was very convincing to get on board and to just kind of think of it as, this investment if we get a return on this investment, it's very secondary to actually, being a part of something with a compelling narrative and watching it unfold. And, at the end of the day, if I've contributed to making a creative project, then that's worth it, regardless of what happens. And if I die having helped make this, then great. Like, why would I regret that in any way? So for me, it was very convincing. And, if you're into a creative endeavor for investment potential alone, I think you're missing the mark, and you're leaving behind a lot of enjoyment along the way, and just basking in the glow of creators living their dreams is super magical. So for me, it was very easy to sign on the proverbial line.
Oh, well said. And I think so I see a lot of head nodding, because I think I've heard pretty much both Chris and Rachel also say similar things. But, we have to define success somehow. So, as we're wrapping up, Chris, how are you planning on defining a successful project from your perspective?
I think Catherine just put it really well there, and I was nodding my head because, one of the final things I said to myself was, if I opted out of this, if I backed away, would I regret it? And if I was on my deathbed, 55 years from now, whatever. And I, hopefully not that soon. And I said, I wish I had done a movie, like it's an opportunity, and welcome these opportunities when they present themselves. So I'm gracious to bring that forward. So the personal success for me is being involved in this. That's what I'm getting to. It's talking to Parker. It's talking to Jonathan, the composer, when we get him in. It's being on set when we're filming. It's being in the editing room in post. It's right now looking at actors and talking about casting. It's being part of the process of one of, if not the thing I love most, hobby wise in life, and that's movies. And so that's a personal success for me. A project success for me, I mean, first and foremost, is if people see it. If we complete this and somebody outside of our team can see it in its entirety, I think that's successful. That's a low bar. Hopefully, I think there are bars above that. If we can get this into a film festival, that's awesome. If we can potentially get a streamer to buy it down the road, that's awesome. If we get a return on investment large enough to fund project number 2, that's awesome. I mean, but there's certain barriers. And when I came into this investing, and I know this has already been mentioned, but I did not necessarily assume that I'm going to get 100% plus back. That's not why I did it. But that's a higher bar of success that I'd be thrilled if it happened. But right now I want us, this awesome team that has been assembled to create a movie that people can see. And if we can say that we've done that, that's awesome. That is a very, very cool thing to me.
And Rachel, how about you? What does success look like?
So for me, I don't think I fully answered your original question, which is why I got on board. And that is, while I'm not on the creative board with you guys, you still listen to feedback. And for me, that was key for signing on. So I wanted to make sure that I said that. Now, as far as success is concerned, I'm in the same vein as Chris. I'm going into this knowing that it's not about the return. It's about getting that opportunity to work on something so completely different than anything that I've engaged on throughout my career, and being able to bring a project like this to life. That is what is really key for me. And to Chris's point, if we could just get some people to see it that are outside of our group, I think that is success. And I think we're going to go well beyond that.
Yeah, it's hard not to dream bigger when you start seeing the pieces start coming together, and it's just like, wait, why wouldn't this be bigger than that? But I'm trying not to get too excited, but I still stand by idea that if this story is competently made, which we all have very strong feelings about Parker's talent, and then the crew that's now going to assemble around Parker, which just amplifies Parker's abilities. It's just that it's hard not to get a little bit excited about what the potential of the project is. But, as I mentioned earlier too, I have a bit of a spending problem, and that is why we're also looking to Kickstarter starting on June 1st, Pride Month. There was discussion of this group right here getting together, and we were talking about, heading down to Chicago for the Pride Parade and start spreading the word. But the big thing for us is on June 1st. That's when our Kickstarter launches. And, I have a couple like things that I think would make the movie a little extra special. And we would love for all you listening audience out there to head out to our Kickstarter page when it launches. You can find more information on our Facebook page or Alternate Ending. We're going to be promoting it all over the place. So be sure to look for more information about our Kickstarter launch and the project. Follow along with the podcast every week on Wednesdays. It'll be releasing. That's Amateur Hour for our upcoming film project, Huntology. Y'all, thanks so much for, number one, for supporting the project and for being on this crazy, wild journey with me. But then also thanks again for joining this crazy, wild podcast as well too. Hopefully we'll get to have all of you on again soon.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, later.
Great. Thanks, Rob.
That's why it's amateur hour. He doesn't know what he's doing. Oh yeah, it's amateur hour.